The basement was colder than the rest of the farmhouse, the kind of cold that clings to your skin. Cole stepped off the last creaking stair, his flashlight beam cutting across cracked concrete and leaning shelves covered in dust. Then a voice, soft and almost pleading, drifted from the far corner. "Please, don't turn on the light." The words stopped him in his tracks. Cole froze halfway between the stairs and the cracked concrete floor, his boots silent against the dust. The whisper hung in the cold air like it didn't belong to the room at all. "Please, don't turn on the light." His grip tightened on the flashlight, thumb hovering over the switch that would flood the room with brightness. He glanced up toward Ramirez, who was halfway down the stairs, rifle angled low but ready. "You hear that?" Cole murmured. Ramirez nodded once. Came from the corner. The basement was larger than it seemed from the outside, stretching into pockets of shadow where the flashlight beam couldn't quite reach. The single bulb in the ceiling was dead, its glass dim with years of dust. Cole took another step forward. The air was damp here, carrying the faint smell of old wood and something else, metallic, faintly sweet. "Who's there?" he called softly. The voice came again, quieter this time. "Don't turn it on." Shadow, the black K9, padded down the last stair without hesitation. His nails clicked against the floor as he moved ahead of Cole, nose low, ears pricked. He stopped near the far corner and let out a single, deep whine. Cole's eyes adjusted slowly, but the far end of the room still seemed unnaturally dark, as though the shadows were thicker there. He could just make out a small shape crouched low against the wall, knees drawn to chest. "Easy," he said, lowering the flashlight beam so it didn't hit her directly. "We're not here to hurt you." Her voice was sharper this time. "Don't turn on the light." Ramirez's boots hit the floor. "Kid, it's pitch black down here. You could trip, break something." "I can see," she said. The words were too steady for a child hiding in a basement. Cole crouched, letting his eyes adjust more, and gradually her outline sharpened. She was barefoot, in a thin dress that might once have been white. Her hair clung in dark strands to her cheeks. But it was her eyes that stopped him, not the color, but the way they seemed to catch what little light there was, reflecting it back faintly like an animal's in the dark. "You live here?" Cole asked. She shook her head once. "Then why are you here?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She glanced toward the opposite corner of the basement, where the shadows were deepest. Shadow's head turned with hers. His body stiffened. Cole followed the line of their gaze, sweeping his light toward the far wall. The beam faltered as it reached that spot, as if the shadows there resisted being lit. Dust hung thick in the air, but there was something else, the faint outline of a door. Not a regular one. Too narrow, and set low into the wall, half hidden behind an old shelving unit. Ramirez stepped toward it. "That's not on the blueprint." "Don't," the girl whispered sharply. "Why not?" Cole asked. She finally looked at him fully. "Because if you open it, they'll know you're here." "They?" Ramirez asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "The ones that don't like the light." A faint thud echoed from behind the narrow door, like something shifting its weight. Shadow's growl rolled low and steady in his chest. Cole stood slowly, mind running through every possibility, a hidden storage space, a crawl tunnel, maybe even a storm shelter. But the sound that had just come from it wasn't any of those. Ramirez circled toward the door anyway. "We can't just ignore it." The girl slid along the wall until she was directly between them and the hidden door. Her bare feet made no sound against the concrete. "If you open it," she said, "don't turn on the light." Cole studied her, the way she stood, not trembling, not pleading anymore. Her voice had shifted from fear to certainty. "What happens if we do?" he asked. Her answer was immediate. "It will move faster." The thud came again, followed by a sound like nails dragging slowly across wood. Ramirez glanced at Cole. "We need to call this in." Cole shook his head. "Not yet." Shadow barked once, sharply, then backed up to stand directly in front of the girl, facing the narrow door. His tail was low but stiff, every line of his body tense. Cole raised his flashlight again, hesitating only a second before clicking it off completely. The basement dropped into pure black. And then he saw them. Not shapes, not clearly. But in the corner where the door sat, the darkness seemed to deepen, shift, as though something was leaning closer from the other side. The girl's voice was right by his ear now. "You can see it, can't you?" Cole's pulse quickened, every muscle in his body coiled tight. The basement's air felt thicker now, as if the darkness itself had weight. Somewhere beyond that narrow door, something moved, not in a steady rhythm like footsteps, but in small, deliberate shifts, pausing just long enough for him to second-guess whether he'd heard anything at all. The girl's breath was steady beside him. She wasn't afraid, not in the way a child should be when talking about something that doesn't like the light. Her calmness was worse than panic. Panic meant normal fear. Calm meant familiarity. "You've seen it before," Cole said quietly. She didn't look at him, her gaze locked on the door. "It comes when it's dark enough. It doesn't like when you know where it is." Ramirez's voice was a low whisper from behind. "What exactly is it?" The girl finally looked at him, her pale eyes faintly reflective in the darkness. "You'll see it whether you want to or not if you keep standing here." Shadow gave a short, sharp huff through his nose, not quite a bark, not quite a growl, then pressed his shoulder against Cole's leg, as if to block him from taking another step forward. Cole squinted, trying to let his own eyes adjust to whatever was in that corner. Slowly, faint shapes began to emerge in the dark, the edge of the shelving unit, the uneven outline of the low doorframe. But there was something else, a faint, shifting distortion, like the air over hot pavement, except here the air was icy cold. A sound broke the stillness. Not the thud from before. This was a faint, wet scraping, as if fingertips were tracing the inside of the door. The girl's hand closed around Cole's wrist, not hard, but firm enough to anchor him. "If you want to make it angry, open it now." Ramirez shifted his rifle. "Or we could end this before it starts." The girl's voice sharpened. "If you open it, you won't end it. You'll let it out." Cole felt the temperature drop another degree. The cold was coming from the door now, seeping across the floor in invisible waves. Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating through Cole's leg. "What's behind it?" Cole asked. The girl shook her head. "Not what? Where?" Her words hit him like a jolt. He stepped forward slowly, ignoring the tension in Shadow's stance. His boots were silent against the dust as he crouched before the door. It was old, the wood splintered in places, but there were no hinges, just a crude latch bolted into the frame. Whatever was beyond, it hadn't been meant to open often. The scraping stopped. Cole held his breath, waiting. Then came a whisper from the other side. It wasn't the girl's voice. It wasn't anyone's voice he recognized. And it was speaking his name. "Cole." Every hair on the back of his neck stood up. He didn't answer. "Cole," the voice was slow, stretching his name into a drawn-out hiss. Ramirez muttered, "That's enough, man. We're getting out." But Cole couldn't move. The girl leaned closer to his ear. "It knows you now. That's all it needs." The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't words. It was laughter, low, almost childlike, but wrong in a way that made his stomach turn. Shadow suddenly lunged forward, pressing his nose to the crack under the door and barking, a deep, furious sound that filled the basement. The laugh stopped instantly. The girl didn't flinch. "It doesn't like him," she said. Cole's voice was tight. "Good." Shadow barked again, pawing at the bottom of the door. And then, something pawed back. The sound was faint but unmistakable, long, scraping drags across the wood, mirroring the dog's movements exactly. Cole grabbed Shadow's collar and pulled him back, his mind racing. "Why are you down here?" he asked the girl. "If you know what's in there, why stay this close to it?" She turned toward him, her voice matter-of-fact. "Because it can't leave until the light comes on. And if you'd turned it on when you came down." She didn't finish the sentence. Cole glanced back toward the stairs. That single dead bulb overhead was their only light source. He didn't know what would happen if it flickered on now, but a part of him believed her. Ramirez stepped toward the stairs. "We need backup. Now." The girl shook her head. "If you leave, it'll know you're gone. It will come up." Shadow growled again, low and constant. His eyes never left the narrow door. Another sound came from behind it, heavier now, like something pressing its weight against the wood. The latch rattled once, softly, as though testing its strength. Cole felt the girl's grip tighten on his wrist. "It's waiting for you to turn the light on." He swallowed hard. "Then we don't give it what it wants." The latch rattled again, harder this time. Dust fell from the frame. Ramirez's voice was tight. "Cole." Cole straightened, keeping one hand on Shadow's collar. "If it wants out, it's not getting it from us." But the voice came again, closer now, just on the other side of the wood. "Cole, please, it's cold in here." The girl whispered, "Don't answer it." And for the first time, Cole realized she wasn't looking at the door anymore. She was looking at something behind him. Cole's breath caught in his throat. The girl's grip on his wrist tightened, her knuckles pale in the faint light bleeding from the staircase above. Her eyes, unnervingly calm up until now, flicked toward the far side of the basement, to a patch of darkness that hadn't drawn his attention before. Slowly, and with every instinct screaming against it, Cole turned. At first, there was nothing but shadows layered against the uneven stone wall. But then, the shadows shifted. He thought it might be his eyes adjusting again, but no, something in that far corner was moving. Slowly, deliberately, like it didn't care if they saw it. Shadow swung around instantly, his body taut, a deep growl reverberating in his chest. "Ramirez," Cole said low, "cover the stairs." "I got him," Ramirez answered, his rifle already trained upward, but Cole could hear the unease in his voice. The girl stepped closer to Cole, her voice a whisper. "It doesn't always stay behind the door." Cole's pulse pounded in his ears. "What is it doing now?" She didn't answer. The shape in the corner elongated, stretching upward, until it almost touched the exposed beam overhead. For a second, Cole thought it might be a trick of the dim light from the stairwell, but then the thing bent at what should have been a neck, angling its head in a way no human could. And it was looking straight at him. A faint sound followed, not breathing, not shuffling, but a slow, irregular tapping, like fingernails brushing lightly against stone. Shadow's bark exploded in the confined space, sharp and furious. The sound should have driven the thing back, but it didn't move. "Cole," Ramirez said, "we need to leave. Right now." But Cole didn't move. His instincts told him that if they bolted now, it would follow. He could almost feel its attention on him, heavy and unblinking. The girl stepped in front of him, small and pale in the dark, facing the corner without fear. "It doesn't like me as much as it likes you," she said, almost matter-of-fact. The words made his stomach tighten. "Why?" She turned her head slightly, her voice low. "Because I stopped listening to it a long time ago." The tapping stopped. The shape in the corner leaned forward, just a fraction, enough for Cole to see a suggestion of limbs, too long for the body, fingers dragging along the wall as it shifted its weight. Then, in the faintest voice, it spoke. Not his name this time. Hers. The girl didn't respond. She just stared back, unblinking. Cole's skin crawled. The thing knew her, and from the look on her face, it wasn't the first time they'd met. The door behind him rattled again, harder now, the wood groaning against its frame. It was as if both threats were aware of each other, and both wanted to be the one to reach them first. Two of them, Ramirez muttered. You have got to be kidding me. Cole's mind raced. Is it the same, whatever, in both places? The girl shook her head slowly. No. But they want the same thing. The sound from the corner shifted, from tapping to a faint scraping, as though it were stepping forward. Light, the girl whispered suddenly. Cole hesitated. I thought. Not that light, she said quickly, pointing toward the stairs. That light. Cole followed her gesture. Near the far wall, half hidden under an old tarp, was a battered lantern. He hadn't seen it before, not in the dimness, but now it was obvious. He moved toward it quickly but quietly, shadow glued to his side. Every step made the thing in the corner adjust slightly, tracking his movement. The girl didn't follow him. She stayed exactly where she was, between the corner and the door in the wall, as if she was holding both threats in check. Cole yanked the tarp aside. The lantern was dusty but intact, the kind with a glass enclosure and a small fuel chamber. It was old, but it might still work. Behind him, the scraping stopped. The silence felt heavier than the sound. Cole, Ramirez warned. I know, he muttered, fumbling for the striker. His fingers found the rough edge, and he struck once. Nothing. The girl's voice rose slightly, still calm, but insistent. Hurry. He struck again. This time, a tiny spark flared inside the lantern, catching the fuel. A warm, flickering glow bloomed, small but piercing in the basement's oppressive dark. The reaction was instant. The thing in the corner recoiled sharply, flattening itself against the wall. It didn't vanish, it stayed, still watching, but the way it pressed back told him the light hurt it somehow. But then, the door in the wall slammed against its frame, so hard the latch popped. Cole spun toward it just as the narrow door cracked open an inch. From the gap, cold air surged out, and a hand, if it could be called that, slid through. Long, pale fingers curled against the wood, the joints bending the wrong way. Shadow lunged at it, teeth snapping inches from the opening. The girl's voice cut through the chaos. You can't fight them both. Cole's mind locked on the truth of her words. One in the corner. One behind the door. Both aware of them now. Ramirez, he barked. We're moving, now. But the girl didn't move. She stood where she was, her gaze locked on the gap in the door. They'll follow you, she said softly. They always do. Cole stepped toward her, lantern in hand, but the moment he did, the thing in the corner took a single step forward. It was enough to make him stop dead. He realized then what she was doing. She wasn't frozen in fear. She was keeping them in place. For a moment, no one moved. The only sounds were the low rumble of Shadow's growl and the faint hiss of the lantern's flame. The warm glow painted the girl's thin frame in gold, but beyond her, in each corner, the dark was still alive. Cole's fingers tightened on the lantern's handle. He could feel its heat in his palm, the only warmth in the cold, damp air. The girl didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the narrow door, on the pale hands still curled around the edge. The fingers flexed once, almost lazily, as though mocking the dog's snarls. Let's go. Ramirez barked from the stairs. He was pale, his rifle aimed first at the corner, then the door, then back again. We can't stay down here. We can't leave her, Cole shot back. We can't save her if we're dead, Ramirez snapped. The girl spoke without turning. If you take me, they'll both follow. And they'll follow you. Cole's jaw clenched. Then we finish it here. She shook her head once, still staring forward. You can't finish them. A slow, scraping sound came from behind the door, nails dragging down the inside, too long and too deliberate to be human. The fingers slipped back into the gap, and for a second, Cole thought it might retreat. But instead, the door pushed open another inch. Cold air poured out in a wave so sharp it burned. Shadow barked, lunging forward, but Cole's grip on his collar held firm. At the same time, the tall figure in the corner began to edge forward. It didn't walk, its movement was too smooth, as if its body didn't need to shift weight from step to step. The girl's voice rose, still calm, but with an edge of command. "Stay where you are." And they did. Cole's mind churned. "How long can you hold them like this?" "As long as I have to," she said. That wasn't good enough. He crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Then tell me what they want." Her gaze finally shifted to him, the lantern's glow reflecting faintly in her pale irises. "They want you to turn on the light." "Not this light." She nodded toward the ceiling, where the dead bulb hung uselessly. "That light." Cole glanced at it. "And what happens if I do?" "They'll be able to touch you," she said simply. Another wave of cold rolled from the door. The lantern's flame flickered, as though struggling against it. Cole glanced toward Ramirez. "That bulb's dead." "It's been dead for years." "Not for them," the girl murmured. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. The tall figure in the corner shifted again, its head tilting at an unnatural angle, watching him. The shadows around it seemed thicker now, as if it were dragging darkness with it. Behind him, the narrow door creaked once more, the sound impossibly loud in the stillness. The girl's fingers curled into fists. "You need to go." "I'm not leaving you here," Cole said. "You'll die if you don't," she replied. Her voice was still calm, but there was a finality to it, as if she knew it wasn't a threat, just fact. Shadow's growl deepened. The fur along his spine stood up like a ridge. Cole took a step closer to the girl. "If I walk out of here without you, what happens?" She hesitated. For the first time, her composure cracked just slightly. "Then they'll still follow you. But at least you'll have a chance to run." Something inside Cole twisted. The lantern's flame wavered again, and the tall figure leaned forward, sensing weakness. Ramirez took a step down the stairs. "Cole, now. Move." The girl's voice was sharper now. "If you go, don't look back. And don't turn on the light." Cole's mind screamed at him to grab her and run, but his instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive in combat zones, told him that if he broke the fragile balance she'd created, both of those things would be on them before they reached the stairs. He swallowed hard. "I can come back for you." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "If you know where to look." The cold from the door deepened. A low hum filled the air, vibrating in Cole's chest. Ramirez shouted, "Cole!" Shadow barked again, jerking forward so hard Cole nearly lost his grip. The tall figure took another step. The door pushed open another inch. The balance was breaking. Cole made his choice. He shoved the lantern into the girl's hands. "Don't let it go out." Then, tightening his grip on Shadow's collar, he backed toward the stairs, never taking his eyes off either threat. The girl didn't move to follow. She stood exactly where she had been, the flickering glow of the lantern casting her shadow long across the floor. When Cole reached the base of the stairs, Ramirez yanked him upward 2 steps at a time. As they climbed, the hum from the door deepened into a low, almost human moan. The tall figure in the corner began to drift forward again, but only until the lantern's glow hit it. Cole didn't look back. But just before they reached the top, he heard the girl's voice, steady and clear in the darkness. "I told you not to turn on the light." And then, as the basement door slammed shut behind them, the bulb overhead flickered, once, twice, as if something was testing it. Cole slammed the basement door shut, the wooden frame shuddering under the force. Ramirez didn't wait. He threw the deadbolt and slid the rusted chain into place. For a second, the two men just stood there, breathing hard. Shadow paced in front of the door, still bristling, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Cole wiped sweat from his forehead, though the air upstairs wasn't warm. "You hear that?" Ramirez's eyes darted to him. "Hear what?" Cole tilted his head. The house was silent, save for the faint ticking of an old clock somewhere down the hall. No scraping, no humming, no movement from below. "That," Cole said, "is what's wrong. It's too quiet." Ramirez adjusted his rifle. "Man, after what we just saw, I'll take quiet." Shadow suddenly stopped pacing. His head snapped toward the dark hallway leading to the front room. His ears pricked forward, his body lowering like he was stalking something. Cole followed his gaze. "Ramirez." "Yeah," Ramirez said. "I see it." There was nothing visible, no figure, no movement, but the air in that hallway felt different. Heavier. Shadow took a slow step forward, then another, nose twitching. Cole cursed under his breath. "We left them in the basement." Ramirez frowned. "We think we did." Cole's mind replayed the girl's words, "They'll follow you." He moved toward the hallway, Shadow just ahead of him. The old wooden floor creaked under their weight. Each step seemed to echo too much, like the sound was being swallowed and thrown back at them. The front room was dim, lit only by the pale light leaking through the boarded windows. Dust motes drifted lazily in the air. Shadow stopped abruptly in the center of the room. His head turned sharply to the left, toward the wall. Cole followed his gaze, and froze. Drawn across the faded wallpaper, in a jagged scrawl, were symbols. They hadn't been there when they entered the house earlier. The lines were uneven, but the longer he looked, the more they seemed to twist, as if shifting under his gaze. "What the hell?" Ramirez muttered. Cole stepped closer. The symbols weren't written in ink or paint. They looked burned into the wall, the edges charred and curling. And at the very center, smeared in something dark and tacky, was a single handprint. Small. A child's hand. Cole's stomach tightened. "She came up here." "No," Ramirez said quietly, eyes scanning the walls. "She didn't come up here. That's the problem." A creak sounded behind them. Both men spun, rifles raised. The hallway was empty. Shadow barked once, loud and sharp. Then, from upstairs, they heard it, faint at first, but growing. A dragging sound. Like bare feet sliding across the floorboards. Cole's grip tightened on his weapon. "She's still down there." "That's not her," Ramirez said flatly. The dragging stopped abruptly. A single, deliberate knock echoed from above. 3 beats of silence. Then another knock. Shadow's growl deepened into something almost primal. Cole exchanged a glance with Ramirez. "We clear it?" Ramirez's jaw flexed. "We can't leave whatever's up there." Cole led the way to the stairs. The boards groaned under their weight, every step announcing their approach. Shadow stayed close, his body rigid, his breathing sharp and controlled. Halfway up, Cole stopped. The faint light from the boarded windows below barely reached the landing. The upper floor was swathed in shadow. From somewhere ahead, a whisper floated down the hall. It wasn't the girl's voice. It wasn't even the same whisper he'd heard in the basement. This one was higher-pitched, urgent, almost pleading. "Don't look." Cole froze. "Don't look," the voice said again. Ramirez frowned. "Look at what?" The whisper grew sharper. "Don't." Cole's pulse pounded. The warning felt real, even if he couldn't see its source. But every instinct screamed at him to look anyway. Shadow's gaze, however, stayed fixed on the end of the hallway. His lips curled back, showing teeth. Cole stepped forward. Stay sharp. As they reached the top of the stairs, something moved in his peripheral vision, just a flicker, like someone darting into a room. They swept toward the movement, rifles ready, and found an open doorway. The room beyond was nearly empty, save for a broken chair in the corner and a layer of dust thick enough to muffle their footsteps. But the far wall made Cole stop cold. Drawn across it, in the same jagged style as downstairs, was another set of symbols, but this time, they formed a crude outline. A tall, elongated shape. Beside it, much smaller, a stick figure of a girl. And between them, a single, wavering line connecting the two. Ramirez's voice was low. That's her. Cole stepped closer. Or it's what's following her. The floorboards behind them creaked. They turned. At the far end of the hall, something stood just beyond the light, tall and motionless. Its head tilted, slow, deliberate, until it was almost horizontal. Shadow lunged forward, barking furiously, the sound bouncing off the walls. The figure didn't move. Cole felt the air change again, colder, heavier. And from somewhere downstairs, faint but clear, came the girl's voice. You shouldn't have come up there. The hallway seemed to stretch longer the more Cole stared at it, the figure at the far end frozen like a shadow cut out of the dark. Shadow's barking grew sharper, each snap of his jaws echoing off the walls, but the figure didn't flinch. Its tilted head stayed locked on them. Cole kept his rifle trained. If it moves. But before he could finish, it did. Not toward them. It turned, slow, deliberate, and began to glide toward the stairs they'd just climbed. Cole's stomach dropped. No. Ramirez's eyes widened. It's going for the girl. They both moved at once, boots pounding the warped boards as they charged after it. Shadow surged ahead, claws scraping against the wood. But the thing didn't hurry. Its long limbs barely lifted as it drifted down the hall, covering distance without the rush of running. Cole squeezed the trigger, the shot cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. The round slammed into the far wall, splintering old wood. The figure didn't react. They reached the top of the stairs just as it began to descend. The boards under it didn't creak. The air in the stairwell felt different now, colder, heavier, as though every breath took effort. Shadow, down. Cole barked. The K9 obeyed instantly, holding position at the top landing, snarling down at the thing as it slipped from sight. Cole and Ramirez followed fast, rifles raised, but halfway down Cole froze. There was no sound of footsteps below. When they reached the first floor, the front room was empty. The basement door was still shut, bolt and chain in place. Ramirez's voice was tight. Then where? From the kitchen came the sound of metal scraping against wood. They moved in quickly, clearing corners. The kitchen was dim, the only light spilling in through the grime-caked window above the sink. On the table sat an old, rusted kettle and a scattering of dust. No figure. No movement. Then Cole's gaze shifted to the back door. The lock was broken. It hung slightly ajar, the cold wind outside pushing it open just enough to let in a thin line of pale daylight. Ramirez swore. It left. Cole wasn't so sure. He stepped toward the door, Shadow glued to his side. The dog's ears were pricked, but his growl had faded into short, sharp wooфs, alert, but uncertain. Outside, the yard was covered in a thin sheet of frost. And across it, leading straight to the treeline, were prints. Cole's chest tightened. They weren't boot prints. They weren't even bare human feet. They were too long, the toes pointed, with deep claw marks trailing behind each step. He felt Ramirez come up beside him. We follow? Cole didn't answer. His eyes drifted up, past the prints, to the shadowed gap between the trees. For a moment, he thought he saw movement there. Not the tall figure this time, but something smaller. A shape low to the ground, crawling. It vanished before he could get a better look. A sound behind them made him turn sharply, 3 knocks against wood. Not from the front room. From the basement door. The knocks came again, this time louder. Cole's voice was low. It didn't leave. The chain on the basement door rattled. Ramirez took a step back. That's not her knocking. Shadow's growl returned, deeper than before. The knocks became pounding, the wood flexing under each hit. Cole grabbed Ramirez's shoulder. We can't open it. Ramirez's eyes flashed. Then what's our play? Because whatever went out that back door wasn't the same thing we left downstairs. Cole's mind raced. 2 threats before, now maybe 3. The pounding stopped. Silence. Then, from the other side of the door, the girl's voice. Please. It's cold. Cole's breath caught. He stepped toward the door, but Shadow moved to block him, planting himself between Cole and the frame. The dog's hackles were raised, ears pinned back. Ramirez's voice was almost a whisper. That's not her. Cole stared at the door. How do you know? Because, Ramirez said, it sounds like her voice when she talks. But not when she stops. Cole froze. The words sank in slowly. On the other side of the door, the girl's voice came again, trembling. Please, let me out. But now that Cole was listening closely, he heard it, the faint, unnatural echo layered beneath her tone. Like something else was speaking with her. Shadow barked, snapping at the air near the crack at the bottom of the door. Cole stepped back. We're not opening it. The voice shifted. The tremble disappeared. Then it spoke again, not in her tone, but in a deep, smooth one that crawled down his spine. You brought the light upstairs. Cole's grip on his rifle tightened. The chain on the door went still. And then, from somewhere outside, deep in the trees, came another voice. Her voice. This time, it sounded real. Cole turned toward the yard. The sound came again, faint but clear. Over here. Ramirez swore. So which one's real? Cole didn't have the answer. But his gut told him the worst possibility, that neither was. The 2 voices, one from the basement door, one from deep in the trees, still lingered in Cole's head, overlapping in a way that made his skin crawl. Ramirez stood stiff, his rifle never wavering from the rattling chain on the basement door. If you're thinking about going out there, you're out of your mind. Cole glanced back toward the yard. If she's really out there. If she's really out there, Ramirez cut in, then whatever's been in here has been baiting us this whole time. You step into those trees, you're done. Shadow whined low in his throat. His body was angled toward the door, but his eyes kept darting toward the frost outside, ears twitching at every faint sound. Cole's jaw tightened. We can't stay here. This house isn't safe. You think the forest is safer? Ramirez shot back. Cole didn't answer right away. The claw tracks still led straight from the back door to the trees, no sign of turning or doubling back. Whatever made them had gone out there. But the pounding on the basement door had changed to a slow, rhythmic tap, as if mocking them for hesitating. Shadow barked sharply. The sound came from outside this time, movement in the frost. Cole turned his head toward the yard and saw it, a small shape moving just at the tree-line. It was her. Or it looked like her. The lantern from below was gone, she carried nothing, her arms crossed tight over her chest against the cold. Her bare feet left no tracks in the frost. Cole's breath caught. She raised her head. Even from this distance, her eyes locked on his. Help me, she called. The tapping on the basement door stopped instantly. Ramirez hissed, that's a trick. Cole's mind was a storm. He'd seen things mimicked before, insurgents using voices, shapes, sounds to draw soldiers into the open. But this wasn't a battlefield. And nothing in those stories could stand in two places at once. Unless there wasn't just one. He looked at Ramirez. You hold the door. You're not going. Cole's voice was firm. You hold the door. If it gets through, you put it down. Ramirez's jaw worked, but he gave a curt nod. Cole grabbed Shadow's harness. With me. The cold hit him like a blade as he stepped outside. Frost crunched under his boots, each step loud in the stillness. Shadow stayed low, ears locked forward, breath steaming in sharp bursts. The girl didn't move. She stood at the treeline, bare skin pale against the dark woods. Cole stopped halfway across the yard. Where's the lantern? Her head tilted, just slightly. It's still lit. Every instinct screamed at him. That's not an answer, Cole said, voice sharp. A faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. You shouldn't have left it with me. Shadow growled. From the corner of his eye, Cole caught movement deeper in the woods. Something large shifted between the trunks, not tall like the figure in the hallway, but wide. Branches cracked. He turned his head just enough to track it. The shape slipped between the trees, keeping low. When he looked back, the girl was gone. The frost where she'd stood was unmarked. Cole! Ramirez's voice ripped through the cold. He spun. The basement door had burst open. The chain dangled loose, swinging slowly. Ramirez stood just inside the frame, rifle up, but his back was to the open dark below. Cole's stomach lurched. Get out of the doorway. Something moved in the shadows behind Ramirez, too fast, too low to be the tall figure from before. It skittered across the wall like a shadow that wasn't tied to any shape. Shadow bolted toward the house. Cole sprinted after him, boots tearing through the frost. Ramirez fired once, the shot deafening in the still air. Whatever was in the shadows dropped out of sight, but the sound it made when it landed wasn't like anything Cole had heard before. Shadow lunged past Ramirez, straight into the basement. Cole cursed, diving through the doorway. The cold inside hit him differently, thicker, almost damp. The faint light from upstairs didn't seem to touch the bottom of the steps. Shadow, he barked. A low snarl answered him from below. Then, from the darkness, you came back. It was her voice again, but softer now, almost gentle. Cole froze at the top step. Ramirez stood behind him, covering the open doorway with his rifle. Tell me that's actually her. Cole didn't answer. From the black, the voice came again. You didn't turn on the light. His fingers tightened on his weapon. Something shifted just beyond the edge of the faint glow. Not the girl, the outline was wrong. Too thin, too long, bending at angles a body couldn't. Shadow growled, deeper now, but he didn't retreat. Cole took one step down. The air dropped colder still, each breath frosting in front of him. Whatever it was in the shadows, it was between him and the dog now. And behind it, barely visible, was a pale, small face. Her face. She lifted one hand, not in a wave, but in a slow, deliberate point. At him. Cole froze halfway down the basement steps, his boot heel hanging over the next tread. The pale face in the blackness didn't blink, didn't shift, it just stared, one small finger still pointing at him. Shadow's growl throbbed in the still air, deep and warning. The sound came from somewhere behind that face, as if the dog was caught on the far side of it. Ramirez's voice was low and tight from behind. You move, you commit. You know that. Cole didn't answer. He was calculating distance, speed, angles, but every number in his head told him he couldn't get to the girl before it did. The face lowered its hand. From the shadows to its left, something slid forward. Not footsteps. No weight on the boards. Just a movement like smoke given shape. Cole, Ramirez's tone sharpened. Talk to me. The pale face turned, but not toward the movement. Toward something else deeper in the dark. Cole followed her gaze. There, just for a second, he saw the faint outline of shadow. The dog's teeth flashed white in the low light as he bared them, his body low, ready to spring. Cole took another step down, his hand tightening on his rifle. Shadow, heel. The canine didn't move. The pale face flickered, gone, then back again, but now closer, as though the distance had collapsed between blinks. From behind Cole, Ramirez hissed, "Don't go all the way down there. You don't know what you're stepping into." Cole's voice was low, deliberate. "If I leave him, he doesn't come back." A sound behind the girl's image, a faint clink of metal. Chains. Then, softly, her voice, "You can't take him." Cole felt the weight of the words settle in his chest. "Why not?" Her head tilted, slow and unnatural. "Because, it's not yours anymore." The shadows shifted around her, like hands, too many of them, pressing against the walls. Shadow barked once, sharp, breaking the tension. The movement in the dark stopped. Then something else moved, on Cole's right. A smaller shape, hunched low, darting just into the dim light before retreating again. He turned his head, but Ramirez's voice cut through quick. "Eyes forward. It wants you split." Cole realized then that the basement wasn't a single open space, it branched, narrow corridors between the old support beams, vanishing into deeper black. The girl's image was in one, shadow was in another. And now both were moving. The girl's face drew back slowly, slipping deeper into her corridor. At the same time, Shadow's growl shifted location, pulling farther into his. Cole swore under his breath. Two paths. One choice. From the stairs, Ramirez barked, "Pick one, now." Cole's mind tore through possibilities. If the girl was real, she needed him. If Shadow was left, he might not survive. Then he heard it, faint, but enough to cut through the fog. The jingle of Shadow's collar. He turned toward the sound. That was all the shadow shape needed. It lunged from the other corridor, not toward him, but toward the steps where Ramirez stood. Cole pivoted and fired, the muzzle flash briefly lighting the entire basement. The shape shrieked, an awful sound, and vanished back into the dark. Ramirez steadied himself, rifle swinging to cover the far side. "You good?" Cole didn't answer, he bolted down Shadow's corridor. The cold deepened with every step, the walls narrowing until his shoulders brushed damp wood. The collar's jingle grew louder. Then, suddenly, silence. Cole stopped dead. "Shadow?" A breath of air brushed his ear. From directly behind him. He spun, rifle up, but the corridor was empty. When he turned back toward where Shadow should have been, the girl was there instead. No corridor, no walls, just her, standing barefoot on the damp floor, head bowed. "You picked wrong," she whispered. Cole's chest tightened. "Where is he?" She lifted her chin. Her eyes were dark holes now, no reflection, no light. "He's where I was." The boards beneath Cole's boots shuddered once, like something big had just landed below them. From the darkness behind the girl, two pale hands reached forward, gripping her shoulders. And pulled her backward into nothing. Cole lunged forward, but the space where she'd stood was empty. From somewhere far off, maybe upstairs, maybe in the trees, Shadow barked. The bark cut through the basement like a flare in the night, sharp, loud, and impossible to tell if it was close or far. Cole spun toward the sound, his boots sliding on the damp floor. The corridor was empty now, the pale hands and the girl both gone. He bolted back toward the stairs. Ramirez was still at the top, rifle trained down, but his posture had changed, tight, tense, eyes wide. "You hear that?" Cole asked as he climbed. "Yeah," Ramirez said, "I hear two of them." Cole froze mid-step. "Two what?" 2 shadows. Cole reached the landing. Outside, through the broken back door, a bark echoed again, short, sharp, real. It had the timbre Cole knew in his bones. But from somewhere in the house, maybe the upstairs hallway, another bark answered it. Same pitch. Same tone. But off. Like it had been recorded and played back. Cole's stomach turned. Which one's him? Ramirez shook his head. You're asking the wrong question. You should be asking, which one isn't? Another bark, this time from the trees. The one outside. Then, immediately after, the one upstairs. The timing was too perfect. One was mimicking the other. Shadow had never barked like that in tandem with anything. He didn't call and respond, he acted. Cole's chest tightened. The one outside's real. You sure? Ramirez asked, eyes narrowing. No, Cole admitted. But I'm betting on it. The bark from the woods came again, but this time it was followed by a low growl. Not a mimic. The growl had grit, breath, life in it. That was enough for Cole. He pushed past Ramirez toward the back door. We move now. Ramirez glanced toward the stairs leading up. And what about that? As if on cue, the upstairs bark turned into something else, a wet, rattling sound that made Cole's skin crawl. It was laughter. Cole didn't slow. We're not going up there. They stepped into the yard, frost crunching under their boots. The cold bit sharper now, the kind that made your breath catch. The tracks from before were still there, leading into the treeline. The barks, the real ones, Cole was certain now, were closer. Shadow broke through the frost ahead, a black shape charging toward them from between the trees. Relief surged in Cole's chest. But as Shadow reached the edge of the yard, he stopped dead. His eyes locked on Cole, but he didn't move closer. Shadow. Heel. Cole called. The dog's ears twitched. Then he looked over his shoulder, back into the trees. Cole followed his gaze. Something moved in the dark between the trunks. Not the tall figure. Not the girl. Something on all fours, low and wide, its movement jerky like a broken puppet being yanked on strings. Ramirez hissed, "We're not sticking around to see what that is." Shadow took one step backward, toward the trees. Cole swore and started forward, but the upstairs window exploded. Glass rained down as something leaned out, its shape wrong, limbs too long for the frame. And in its hand, the girl. Or something wearing her shape. Her head lolled to one side, eyes open but unfocused. The thing holding her turned its head toward Cole, tilting it almost upside down. Then it smiled, wide, too wide. From the trees, the other shape began moving faster. Shadow barked, a deep, urgent sound, and then bolted back into the forest. Cole's mind split in two. If he went after Shadow, he'd lose whatever was at the window. If he stayed, he'd lose the dog. Ramirez's voice cut in, sharp. Pick now. Cole's pulse pounded in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him that either choice was wrong. The thing in the window let go. The girl's body fell, hitting the frost with a sickening thud. She lay still. The shape in the trees stopped moving, like it was watching what Cole would do next. Shadow barked again, farther away now. Cole's breath caught in his throat. He moved. Cole's boots punched deep into the frost as he ran, straight toward the girl's body. The forest could wait. Shadow could wait. This, whatever had thrown her from that window, it wasn't going to vanish back into the dark without showing itself again. Ramirez swore behind him but didn't hesitate to follow, rifle up, scanning the second story. The long-limbed figure was gone. Cole dropped to one knee beside the girl. Her skin was cold, too cold for someone who'd just been inside. Her eyes were open, lips parted, breath shallow but there. She's alive, Cole breathed. Get her up, Ramirez said, eyes still tracking the window. We need to move before. The bark from the forest cut him off. Cole's head jerked toward the trees. Shadow's voice was urgent now, desperate. But the sound came from deeper in than before, like he was retreating or being pulled. Go, Ramirez said. I'll cover the house. You get him. Cole looked down at the girl. Her lips moved. He leaned closer. What? Her breath hitched. Don't turn on the light. Before he could answer, a sharp click split the air. The porch light above the back door flicked on. The world changed in that instant. The frost shimmered unnaturally bright, every shadow stretched into impossible shapes. The air seemed heavier, the silence deeper. The girl's eyes widened, not from fear of him, but from whatever the light revealed. At the treeline, the shape stalking in the dark was no longer just an outline. In the light, it had form, hunched, mottled skin stretched tight over bone, eyes black and wet, mouth too wide and too still. It didn't blink. Shadow wasn't beside it. Shadow was inside it. Cole's stomach turned. He could see the black fur through the thing's translucent skin, could see the dog's muscles tense and twist like he was fighting from within. The thing's head tilted, and Shadow barked from inside its chest, muffled, wrong. Ramirez's voice was sharp. What the hell is that? The upstairs window exploded again. The long-limbed figure dropped to the yard, landing in a crouch, its head swiveling toward the light. It hissed. Not at Cole. At the hunched thing in the trees. The girl's fingers dug into Cole's sleeve. Turn it off. Cole didn't move. The two creatures stared at each other across the yard, the air between them vibrating with a tension he could feel in his bones. Then, they moved. The long-limbed figure launched toward the forest, its speed blurring its shape. The hunched thing shrieked, turning to meet it, Shadow's bark trapped in the sound. Cole's body acted before his mind caught up. He shoved the girl toward Ramirez. Get her out. And then he ran for the trees. The frost shattered under his boots. Branches whipped his arms as he plunged into the treeline, the fight ahead thrashing the darkness into chaos. He caught flashes, the hunched thing's mottled skin, the long-limbed one's skeletal arms, both locked in a violence that seemed less like combat and more like a feeding frenzy. Shadow barked again, closer now, but still trapped. Cole raised his rifle, trying to find a shot that wouldn't hit the dog. The creatures rolled, smashing into trunks, their limbs tangling. For a split second, he saw Shadow's head push through the hunched thing's ribcage, teeth bared, eyes locked on Cole. Now, the dog's body seemed to scream. Cole fired. The shot punched through the mottled thing's side. It howled, jerking away from the long-limbed figure. Shadow ripped free, fur matted with something dark, hitting the ground hard. The long-limbed figure moved instantly, not toward Shadow, but toward Cole. It was fast, faster than he'd calculated, and its hand closed around his rifle before he could fire again. Its voice was a rasp in his ear. You brought the light. And then, it was gone, vanishing into the black, leaving only the sound of branches swaying like something much larger had passed. Shadow staggered to Cole's side, pressing against his leg. Warm. Real. Alive. From the yard, Ramirez shouted, We have to go, now. Cole turned. The girl was gone. The porch light flickered once, twice, and went out. The forest went still. Cole looked down at Shadow. The dog's ears were forward, not on the house, but on the deeper woods. And in the dark beyond, a single small voice floated back to them. Please, don't turn it on again.